Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today I'm going to be looking at a really beautiful new release from Bachmann. I say that today's loco is a new release from Bachmann, which it is, but it isn't a new tooled locomotive. Today's loco actually first appeared 10 years ago, back in 2011, when Bachmann released it as an exclusive Locomotion Models locomotive, and then the following year Bachmann modified it and released a few more versions of it for a general release which went out to the different retailers. And then right now, in 2021, after a hiatus of many years, the model is back. And the loco is this. It is the Bachmann LMS compound locomotive in the beautiful lined crimson. And that's the important part for me because Bachmann have produced a lot of these locos over the years, but very rarely in the crimson. And I think that's the one that everybody likes. And that's the reason I've got this one here today because as you can see, just looking through the box there, it's absolutely beautiful, so I can't wait to get this thing out. So that's the good news, we've got a beautiful loco back in Bachmann's range. The bad news with this loco is, of course, the price. So the latest RRP for this loco on Bachmann's website, as you can see, is £214.95. Wow, where do we start with that price? Well, clearly that is a ludicrous price if you ask me, because back in 2012 when Bachmann did that general release, the RRP for this thing was £132.80, and of course at that point they'd only just developed it, they've got all of those tooling costs to cover. That's not the case now. This model is 10 years old, all of the tooling is done, all they've got to do is produce the thing and now it's going to be over £200 RRP. Absolutely crazy. What makes this thing even more insulting in terms of price for me is, you see that one behind me there, the BR Black one? Well, I reviewed that one back in 2018, having purchased it for £80 in as new condition, and at the time Hatton's had some new ones in stock, I believe, and I wrote the price down as £118. So the price increase for this loco is absolutely extreme, isn't it? And it's quite disheartening really because Bachmann's prices are now so expensive that these models cannot be enjoyed really by the masses anymore. Anyway, so I bought mine for £182.70 from Derail's Models, which believe it or not was one of the best prices going, as insane as it is. I have not had this loco out of the box yet, so maybe Bachmann have improved this, maybe they've added more detail, maybe it's got speaker now, maybe it's got lights, maybe it's got other features that new released locos have. If it does, I'm still not sure it will be worth £180 or even £215, but at least then it will have features that new releases have at that sort of price. So we're going to take a look at this today, we'll find out whether it's worth the money. I'll be very, very surprised if it is, but we need to go into this with an open mind and find out. So come with me on this little journey, let's take a look at the new LMS compound from Bachmann and see what features it's got. Okay, here we go. So yeah, I've complained quite a lot about the price and genuinely I don't understand why this should be as expensive as it is, and I don't expect it to turn out to be worth what it cost. However, the LMS compound that I've had from Bachmann previously, you know, the one I reviewed a few years ago, was a great loco. It had a lot of great features, it was really nicely put together. So really, I'm expecting this to be a good model. Don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting this to be an awful rip-off like some of the EFE rail stuff was. I'm expecting it to be a really good model. So by all means, I'm expecting this to be an enjoyable model to look at. Let me show you the version that I have right here then. So it's product code 31-934, that's what you need to look up. It is the LMS compound number 1119, so it's not the original number 1000 like Bachmann released for the NRM all those years ago. It is the LMS one, and it's in the LMS lined crimson, and it has a 21-pin DCC decoder socket inside, so that's what you need if you want to chip this thing. But having said that, even though it's not in the Midland livery, it still looks pretty darn amazing. Although, to be honest, if Bachmann had produced the Midland livery as an additional choice to the LMS, I think I would have gone for that because I love the pre-grouping. Anyway, let me show you the back of the box then, because there's an incredibly brief history. We're used to seeing huge paragraphs of text these days, but no, for this one there's very, very little to read, but I will give you a little bit more information on the class a bit later on. But for now though, let's find out what Bachmann's latest LMS compound is like. Let's see if they've made any changes to the design, let's see if they've improved it at all, and more crucially, let's see if it's worth the astronomical price tag. Well, as you can see, clearly this is a beautiful loco to begin with. Look at that. Yeah, this is going to be grand, isn't it? It certainly is. I can't wait to see the finish on it. Yeah, it's going to be a very, very different loco to the Hornby Railroad ones, which are great, don't get me wrong, very good for what they cost, but this ought to be the premium one, didn't it? Okay, so we've got product maintenance and care. I expect this will be just quite generic, so yeah, running in, cleaning and maintenance, lubrication, DCC. Yeah, no diagrams or anything, so we'll skip over that. I'm pretty sure I've showed that exact booklet before. And then this seems to be more specific to the loco. So here you go, Midland Compound 440 exploder diagram. And you can see a bit about the loco there. It's got the Bachmann can motor. Not sure what motor this has got. Maybe it's got a 5-pole motor. That will help to justify the cost. And the DCC socket is in the tender, which suggests that we do at least have some sort of electrical connection to the tender. So fingers crossed and touch some wood, we might even have tender pickups on this. That would be nice. Nice little parts list at the bottom there. And then on the back, there's a bit more information here. Running in curves, body removal, that's important. The diagram over there on the right-hand side shows you the location of all the screw holes and such. And down at the bottom, looks like there's instructions on how to fit the various accessories, or at the very least it shows you where everything goes, which is good. And we'll take a look at those next, because I saw the accessories bag in the top there. All right, let's do this then. How does it feel? It feels quite weighty, actually. Of course, I'll bung it on the scales. When I did the last Midland Compound review, I didn't have my scales, I don't think. I don't think the weight was a part of my reviews. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to cover today, actually, because I include quite a lot more in my reviews these days. Okay, so here is the accessories pack. You can see we've got quite a bit inside here. The nice features are the screw link couplings, which appear to be made of metal and actually functional, so you could fit those if you wanted to use them. What have we got there? We've got a speaker housing by the looks of it, which suggests that the loco does not come with a speaker pre-fitted. Again, that's what you'd really want if you're paying all this for a loco these days, and Bachmann do offer that on their new tooled locos. So today I am going to be coming down hard on Bachmann if this loco doesn't have the features that you'd expect a very modern and very expensive loco to have. Let's see, there's a few other things inside there. It looks like there is one of those opening firebox doors. Don't know if that's what that is. I don't know, but the instructions showed you at least where the front buffer beam area parts went. But I don't fit those anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. Right, let's have a look at this loco then. Let's just have a look what that says on the front. Is that just the usual thing about the loco and tender being stuck together? Yep, I think it is. So we can open up this clamshell and take the first look. All right. And yeah, I'm not disappointed at all in that livery. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? And Bachmann have done LMS liveries well for many, many years. They've always looked good. And this one does too, which is fantastic. Right, let's pull this out then and take the first close look at this lovely loco. Well, I can tell for a start that the loco and tender still are not coupled together properly. There is no screw holding them together. You've got that drawbar, so let me just try and engage that so that I don't pull and damage the wires straight away. Come on, Bachmann, fix these things. If you're charging this amount of money, it needs to be perfect, I'm afraid. But, ranting aside, it does look absolutely exquisite, doesn't it? The lining does so much for this loco. It looks like it's been put together really nicely. I can't see any imperfections, which is again exactly what you'd expect at this sort of price point. And also the loco itself, not so much the tender, but certainly the loco, seems really, really weighty. This loco does have the die-cast running plate, so that is a feature that Bachmann have not skimped on with this loco. And of course, a 440 isn't a particularly powerful wheel configuration in model form, because there's just not a lot of loco over the driving wheels, particularly a loco like this where the front bogie is quite large. It's not that useful putting lots of weight over the front bogie. So yeah, a lot of 440s struggle with weight, and so a die-cast running plate is a must with a 440. This loco doesn't have any more die-cast in terms of its sort of cab or firebox or boiler, but the weight does feel pretty good, and I'll confirm that with you after I've weighed it. Yeah, it looks absolutely stunning, does this, as well it should. So, as promised, a bit of history on the LMS compounds and the Midland compounds, and then we'll take a really close look at this and enjoy some of its beautiful details. Okay, let's do it. Also known as the Midland Railway 1000 class, these locomotives started life way back in 1902 when just 5 three-cylinder compound locos were produced by Samuel Johnson for passenger work. Richard Dealey came along and further developed the locos, simplifying yet enlarging the design before they were eventually rebuilt completely by Henry Fowler. The class was, as you might imagine, very successful, and when the LMS was formed in 1923, the class was chosen to serve as the standard LMS Express locomotive, as they were very powerful, fairly fast, capable of up to 85 miles per hour, and they were also pretty versatile due to their modest size. 45 of the 1000 class were built in total, followed by 195 LMS compound locomotives like this one, and they were built through the 1920s, and they were essentially identical to the Midland design, which gave 240 of this design in total, most of which survived into the BR era. Only one has been preserved though, unfortunately, and it is number 1000, and it is part of the National Collection, hence why this was produced as an exclusive for locomotion models initially. So there she is then, the Bachmann Midland compound up close and personal for you. And in real life this loco was built in 1924, so I guess that does make it an LMS compound. Truthfully, I do say Midland compound all the time, just through force of habit, but of course it is a Midland design through and through, so I guess it's not too bad that I keep saying that. Anyway, just look at this thing. Expensive or not, this is a beautiful locomotive, really nicely produced, looks fantastic, and I'm pleased to say that it does have a lot of modern detailing, which is really good to see. However, this design does date back around 10 years, and that does show in a few areas. And the funny part is there is evidence of some cost cutting, because some aspects of the model are actually worse than they were on previous releases from Bachmann. For instance, here we've got a wonky safety valve, as you can see, but the whistle there has a very plasticky finish in contrast to the metal finish of the safety valves. Well, that wasn't the case on the BR Black Midland compound I looked at from Bachmann. That did have a metal looking whistle. Now I suspect this LMS whistle is made of metal, but it's just been painted, and obviously the finish of that paint is very plasticky, but regardless of the reason, it doesn't look as good as on the previous release. We've also got a fairly unconvincing chassis because the shafts of the various gears are visible. And again, that wasn't really the case on the previous loco I looked at, because those were blackened out so you couldn't see them. But on this one they are shining brightly, so they're quite noticeable and distracting. So well done Bachmann, you've made this farcically more expensive than it was before, and it's also demonstrably worse off. And then there's also the visible parting line across the top of the boiler, as well as the noticeable fit of certain components. I suppose the main one is the dome here with the big gap around it, and that's always been the case with the Bachmann compounds. So yeah, it's not quite as refined as you'd expect a loco from 2021 to be. And if this was all reflected in the price, then it would be fine, but of course it isn't. With an RRP as high as this, the loco commands perfection, and it doesn't quite reach it, but overall it is great. So the finish, as you can already tell probably, is fantastic. A lovely satin finish on the bodywork, which looks very high quality. There is a fair bit of lining and other decoration on this loco. The boiler banding is quite simple, just the single banding, not dreadfully complex, but it is done well, so it gets a tick. Around the side of the cab you've got more lining, which again isn't dreadfully complex, but I suppose it does follow quite a complex shape, and it has been printed on very nicely too. So top marks for precision and accuracy there. You've got the 4P classification on the top of the cab. Of course these 440s were 4P classified. Lovely running number with the black outline / shadow, looks really good. There does seem to be a bit of a splodge around it though, as you can see, something spilt on there. Yeah, that's not the greatest, but overall decoration really good. The splasher, of course, nicely lined, and you've got the LMS builder's plate presumably printed onto there as well. We'll take a close look at that. Then the die-cast running plate is adorned with the lovely yellow lining too, which looks great. And then all of the steps and the cylinders as well, which drop down from the running plate, those are all beautifully lined as well. So the paintwork is gorgeous, and I've barely scratched the surface of it really. I mean, the wheels, look at that, you've got the lovely yellow lining around the outside of the wheels, which is precise actually, yeah, no noticeable paint bleed or anything with that. You've got the centres of the axles on these, which are visible unfortunately, but they have been painted over, which isn't too bad I suppose. Here's a look at the buffer beam, which again has been lined, and the buffers fitted to it have some yellow lining around the ends as well. So it's a very decorative locomotive, very attractive as well. And while we're here, I might as well show you that the buffers are indeed sprung. I believe they're made of metal too, which is nice. The smoke box door, I don't think it opens on this. Again, 215 quid RRP. Would be nice to see features such as the opening smoke box door, but that doesn't appear to be the case with this one. But it does have a few parts on it, such as the lamp iron there. You've got the handrail across the front of it, and also the running number and shed code printed onto the front. And then the running plate itself has some very fine looking lamp brackets as well, nothing wrong with those at all. And then the buffer beam on the front does have this vacuum pipe pre-fitted. Let's start taking a look at some more of the details then. So across the boiler and firebox, you've got this pipe here, which maybe that would double up as a handrail actually, because it doesn't seem to have a separate handrail. Little bit of glue visible on some of those. So again, not the most refined model in the world, but it's not dreadfully noticeable. Then you've got the various pipework on the side of the boiler as well, which extends down to the mechanical lubricator on the running plate, which is quite a fine piece. And then between the frames you've got a little bit of representation of the valve gear. It doesn't have an awful lot of depth to it, and it isn't painted or anything, but I think that does the job, doesn't it? You cast your eyes down there, you see the detail, and I think the effect is quite a good one, so no problem with that. The reversing rod is just made of plastic though, and it looks quite a thick chunky piece with a little bit of flashing evidence around the edge of it, which isn't the best maybe, but again, not a huge issue I suppose. The underframe, despite being spoilt slightly by those visible shafts, is pretty darn detailed actually. You've got quite a lot in the way of brake rigging and such, which is quite detailed, and you can see the dampening springs and such if you look between the spokes of the wheels, which is a nice touch. The cylinder crosshead and the coupling and connecting rods are all pretty good looking as well. Nice fine metal parts. And there's a look at the coupling rods as well. Yep, no issues with those, they all look great. And then I think the star of the show for this loco is the cab. I'll tease you first of all by showing you the glazing, which is outlined with a bit of lining. Nice flush glazing. The top of the cab has this separately fitted sort of duct or vent on top, which has a nice bit of depth to it. Side of the cab, you've got some grab rails as well for safety purposes. And then, of course, inside the cab, you have the painted detail, which is really quite something. I mean, 10 years old or not, this is an impressive cab, even by modern standards. So you've got full paintwork on the gauges, the regulator stands out really nicely, lots and lots of different colours used. It looks like we've got fully detailed water gauges as well. Cream paintwork on the back walls, wooden effect on the floor. It's a really, really nice cab. Just look at all of the detail inside there. If you put some crew inside there, the effect would really, really be quite astonishing. Very good cab indeed. And then you've got this metal tender fall plate, which is adjustable. So if you wanted to make the model even more realistic, you could definitely engage that. Let's take a look at the tender then, which is absolutely gorgeous. I think this livery really does this tender justice. I've always loved the sort of archways on the underframe of this tender design, and the LMS lined liveries really help to outline that, makes them stand out beautifully. So look at the underframe to start with. There's quite a lot going on here. You've got the lining on the wheels, the lining on the underframe, and then the black of the axle boxes and the springs. It's just such an elegant look. And then the body of the tender isn't much different. You've got the lovely lining, all very good looking. The LMS lettering, again, faultlessly applied, really nice, really great finish. Up in the top, you've got the separately fitted coal load, which appears to be a die-cast piece as well, which is probably removable, but I don't want to push my luck by putting too much force on it. But yeah, you might be able to remove that. It does seem to be quite loose. The controls on the tender are painted as well, so you've got a little bit of a metallic finish on those. Quite a lot of detail around the tender. I've spied a water scoop between the frames of it, which is great. On the back, quite a lot of painted detail. You've got a builder's plate possibly, the water capacity of the tender, I'll get a close-up on that. Oh, the list is endless. Separately fitted handrails, pre-fitted couplings, little hook on the buffer beam for your screw-link couplings, metal sprung buffers. Yeah, I mean, it's a detailed tender. It really is a good looking tender. So hopefully that is a good look at the loco and tender. There is a lot of good to say about this loco. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's worth the money, because even if it was ultra refined, I think £215 RRP or £180 from the retailers is too much to pay for a loco as old and as modest in size as this. However, you can't say that it's lacking in details, or that it's very, very unrefined, or that it's super light. There are locos that are total rip-offs in my opinion, and I don't think this is one of them. Just before we go on to performance, I'll talk about the weight. It weighs in at 326 grams, loco and tender, which is more than the Hornby Black 5, quite impressive, and it's also some 30 grams more than the Great Western City class, which is also a 440 from Bachmann. So that die-cast running plate, which has a beautiful finish on it by the way, is definitely doing its job, and I expect this loco to be a fairly good puller. However, I've never done an in-depth look into the mechanism of the Bachmann LMS compound. Hey, I said LMS that time. So this ought to be pretty interesting. Obviously, expectations are very high, but let's find out whether they're met. So there she is, down onto the track, ready for the first test. Now yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed, unfortunately folks, in the mechanism. Before I took a look at the mechanism, before I investigated it, I was willing to say that this was a good, if horribly overpriced locomotive. But now that I have seen the mechanism, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a bit of a rip-off. The mechanism isn't terrible or anything, but it certainly isn't befitting of a loco that costs between £180 and £215. And the thing is that this loco actually cost about the same as one of Bachmann's newly developed, newly tooled locomotives. And because of that, there's absolutely no reason why Bachmann couldn't have redeveloped the mechanism, brought it up to modern standards, and given their customers some of that quality that they've paid for so dearly. And they haven't, and the fact that they haven't is really shady of Bachmann, if you ask me. It makes it seem like they don't care, and it makes it seem like they're just after your money without putting in the work for it. So let's take a look. This loco is a little bit light on pickups. The loco and tender combined have 14 wheels between them, but only 8 wheels have pickups. The loco driving wheels all have pickups on them, those are the good kind, and then 4 of the 6 tender wheels have these pickups on them, which just go to the axles. They're quite flimsy, and in my experience they're not as effective as the proper wiper pickups that go to the wheels, so they're not great. You've also got this plug, which for some ungodly reason is situated behind the front axle of the tender, which is so inconvenient if you ever need to take the loco apart. You've got to take out that front axle, you've got to faff around with all the wires. No idea why they did that. As I said earlier on, you've still got that insecure drawbar which is not screwed in place, which is very easy to disengage. Again, that's very inconvenient. This all should have been redeveloped. If you're familiar with my reviews, you'll know that the next step is to remove the base keeper plate and show you the bearings and the axles and such. Well, I removed the screws as usual, but the base keeper plate was not budging an inch, not even a millimetre. And I can only conclude that it's been glued down in place because I cannot shift it. And I've owned one of these locos before, so, you know, I know how to take them apart. The thing isn't moving, so I'm pretty sure it's been glued into place. Whether it's supposed to be glued into place is another thing, so your mileage may vary on that. But my example is completely unserviceable. If I want to access the axles for cleaning and lubrication, I'm probably going to have to break the base keeper plate or something to try and get access to it. So that sucks, really, doesn't it? Luckily though, I do have another of these LMS compounds from Bachmann, and on my BR Black one, very easy to remove the base keeper plate, and you can see that this does have a proper set of bearings on the axles, which is great, and it's just a single driven axle too, so that's fair enough. The chassis itself then, very bare bones as you can see, no speaker, no lights or anything on board. It doesn't even have a 5-pole motor, this is just a basic 3-pole motor. Yep, 215 quid folks, don't forget that. And obviously the armature is exposed, so you can easily count the number of windings on there, just 3 of them. This is silly of me, I know, but I decided to remove the worm drive cover just to see if there was a flywheel inside there. Of course not though, and I shouldn't have been so foolish to think there might have been. Nope, no flywheel at all. So this means that the Hornby Railroad model of the Midland compound, yes, the one that costs £75, it actually has a better mechanism than the £215 RRP Bachmann compound, right? Because it's got all the same features that the Bachmann has, except it's got more pickups, better pickups on the tender. It's got a better loco to tender design, both on the drawbar and the plug. It's much more secure. It's actually possible to access and service its bearings. And yes, it does have a flywheel, unlike the Bachmann. So it's not looking too good, is it, given how expensive it was? And the gauging wasn't exactly great either. I was getting 14.5 or 14.6, which is a little bit tight, and I measured them again just to verify, and on the front driven axle I got 14.7, so that's really quite tight. Not ideal at all. So the mechanism is fit, I would say, for a 100 quid locomotive, but for a 180 or a £200 plus loco, it's not really good enough. And there are no excuses for Bachmann not to have redeveloped this, because anything released these days, even from Bachmann, funnily enough, tends to have a far better mechanism than this does, particularly at this sort of price point. But how does it run? Let's see, does it actually work? Yes, it does work. Okay, that's nice. Reverse. How's it? How fast is it? Is it speedy? Here's 50% speed. Okay, yeah, it's reasonably quick. I wouldn't say it's too fast. And of course, these were fairly quick, brisk locos in real life. So I think it's right that they're capable of some speed. How's the crawl though? I think this loco would look great at a crawl. Let's have a look. I'm turning it up gently. Hasn't been run in yet, of course, so it will need 30 minutes in each direction before it's at its best. But straight out of the box, here we go. I'm turning it up still. Oh, there we go. Hand off the controller. Okay, so it is going, so that's quite impressive, but it's not a particularly smooth motion. It is sort of jerking forwards, and I think it's cut out now, has it? No, perhaps I'll just need to give it a bit more. Turning up. Yeah, so it's cogging. It doesn't have very much control, and I bet there's no torque there. You ready? Put my fingers there. Yeah, it stopped it dead. Because it's a 3-pole motor, you know, they're not known for their torque or their great low-speed performance. So it does seem to be showing through in the performance, unfortunately, that this doesn't have the greatest motor, but maybe that will go away as the loco runs in. Must be said though, at the higher speeds, nice and smooth. Like that speed. It's not particularly constant at the moment, but I can see that developing into a nice smooth runner. So it's not terrible by any means, but again, for the price, I think it could and should have been better. Okay, let's run it in then, 50% speed, let's see how it handles the layout. Yeah, so that is fairly brisk, isn't it? It's not too fast, I wouldn't say. Hopefully it won't get too much faster than that as it runs in. But yeah, it seems to be fairly smooth. Without a load, it doesn't really seem to be slowing down too much on the second radius, which suggests that the slight issues with the gauging are not causing too much trouble, so that's pretty good. Yeah, actually it looks great as it runs around. It's nice and smooth. Not too noisy. Yeah, it's not a dreadfully noisy loco, so I suppose that's pretty good. Seems to be handling everything fine. No derailments, of course. Looking good. So I will keep this running in. I will watch it, of course, keep a close eye on it, make sure nothing goes wrong. And then I'll come back to you once running in has finished, and we'll see whether that crawl is any better. Okay, stick with me. Okay, I am back. Oh, that was good parking, wasn't it? Right, let's find out what difference running in has made. The first obvious difference I noticed while it was running around is that it's actually quite a lot faster now. Not to the point where it's over the top, I would say, but yeah, maybe the gearing is a little bit higher than I thought it was, and maybe that would explain why the crawl didn't seem as good, although that was only true before running in, so maybe that won't be the case. One thing that is true, though, is that the torque is really not very good. If I set this to forwards and then hit it with 40% speed, you can see how much the wheel set is throttled. Let me show you that again. So here we are, 40% speed, finger in front, almost comes to a stop, as you can see. Now that is not normal. If I do the same thing with the Hornby Midland compound, which was, you know, 75 quid, like I say, you can see that the wheel set is not struggling to turn at all. And in fact, even if I put some extra weight on the top with my finger, the slowdown is barely noticeable. On here, it's significant. Look at this, 40% speed, barely able to turn. So yeah, there isn't very much torque there, that's for sure. The pulling power is really good. I measured 0.32 newtons, which translates to around 21 coaches on straight and level track. So raw tractive effort, great. The motor is not producing great torque though. Anyway, let's see if the crawl is better now. It has had 30 minutes in each direction now, so we can judge it properly. Let's see here. Hand off the controller now. So, on the positive side, that is very slow, and it does seem to be sustaining it without cutting out permanently, but it is cogging quite a lot. It is moving forward in jumps, in increments, rather than in a smooth motion. Let's turn it up a little bit then. A bit higher speed. Yeah, you can see it's still inching forwards, so it's not a terribly smooth performer. It's not terrible either, don't get me wrong, this is probably acceptable, but I was expecting something special given how expensive this was, and it's not something special. It's very average. It's performing the way you'd expect a loco, around half of its price, to perform. Yeah, but it's okay. And here's to show you the idea of the speed. I'll go at 50% speed past the camera. Yeah, I think that's definitely faster than it was before. Not so fast in reverse. But yeah, so it's speedy. So my guess is going to be the gearing. It's not too bad, and I think it's quite good that this loco can do a good speed. It does seem to be favouring the higher speeds a little bit, perhaps. Anyway, I've set up 5 LMS coaches for this loco to haul. I am wondering how she's going to handle them up Gordon's Hill, though, given that we know there's very little torque there. But that's why we need to test it to find out for sure. So here we go, reverse. Let's see if I can do a controlled coupling. There we go, and I must say, at this sort of speed, it is very smooth. So at the higher speeds, it's a smooth runner. Yeah, very much so. Just not so much at the lower end. Okay, have we coupled? Yes, we have. Okay, let's see then. I think 40, I think 50 is a bit fast, so let's call it 40 for the running session. Let's go quite brisk. Let's see if she can shift them. Yes, she can. Right, and we'll check in with that in just a second then. And then on the middle line, I've got my other Bachmann Midland compound, which I'm pleased to say does perform largely the same as the new one I've got, even though it's a few years older. So that's good. That means that the LMS one that I've showed today is at least somewhat typical of the performance of these. However, the performance was much more reasonable when these were so much cheaper. I think now that we're in 2020 and these are still here as very expensive models, the performance has been left far behind by newer developed models. I mean, pick one. They're all better, aren't they, really? And then on the inside line, as always, we've got Hornby absolutely thrashing Bachmann on performance and mechanism with their far, far cheaper loco. So this is the Hornby Midland compound, less than half the price, better mechanism, and guess what? Better performance. Okay, let's see how the speed changes then. Was I right or wrong about the torque? Seems all right for now. Ooh. Oh yeah, so that's slowed down quite considerably. So I stand by what I've said about the motor. A 3-pole motor would be fine if it performed as well as other 5-pole motors do, and if there was plenty of torque there, but it just doesn't. So why? Why? What's the point? What's the advantage of the 3-pole motor? In this case, I don't really understand that. But it is handling the coaches, as you can see. It has managed to take them all the way up Gordon's Hill and not stop. So, I mean, that's not much to shout about, but at this point I'm clutching at straws. So, yes, that is a positive. Let's not take away, though, from how darn beautiful this loco from Bachmann is. It's easily one of the best looking locos I've got in the collection. They've really done a great job. And I tell you what, I think they looked as good as this 10 years ago. So, visually, these locos are definitely a credit to Bachmann. I want to give credit where credit is due. That does mean, though, that the fact that the mechanism is so substandard is so much more disappointing, because if this loco was the full package, if it had all the features and a great mechanism and the great performance to match, this would really be an absolute stunner, and maybe it would even be worth what Bachmann are charging for it. No guarantees, but it would be closer, wouldn't it? It'd be closer to being worth it. But yeah, as is quite often the case, it's just not quite hitting the mark on performance. But then again, it is more than usable. It's certainly usable, and I can see myself happily running this on many occasions. So it's not unrunnable by any means, no. It's a fine runner. It's just, you know, you want a bit more than that given how much Bachmann are charging. But yeah, nice loco, nice looking loco overall. If you've got a flat layout, not too many tight curves, short rakes of coaches, no more than 5 coaches long, I would say, and you're not expecting your locos to crawl too much, then this loco will be absolutely fine for you, and the issues with its mechanism shouldn't really manifest too much. However, if you've got a more tricky layout with tighter curves, possibly some gradients, and you're expecting this loco to crawl and perhaps haul some longer trains, then you're going to be left disappointed, and for 180 to 200 quid or whatever this thing costs, it's probably not going to do the job for you. So carefully consider what your needs are and what you're going to be asking of this loco. Not that it matters, of course, but if they produce more, these are things you'll need to consider. Let's have some ratings then for the new Bachmann LMS compound locomotive. I think the problem is back in 2018, when I last reviewed one of these models, according to my notes, it was possible to pick one up brand new for £118. And now here we are just 3 years later, and Bachmann have made no noticeable upgrades to it, and in fact some elements of the detail are very slightly poorer than they used to be. And now the cheapest I can find it for is £182.70. And so for me, what used to be a really great model for the price now really isn't so much. That being said, the level of detail definitely gets 5-star because this is a very, very beautiful locomotive. It's perfectly painted, the finish on it is really, really good, and the level of detail is great as well. The cab is the biggest standout feature, but it's also got a few other nice bits and bobs such as the metal sprung buffers and also the valve gear between the frames. No way to fault the level of detail, it's really good. The performance was going to be 4-star because generally the performance is okay, good constant speed, just not so great at crawling, so it was just going to lose the 1-star for that. However, now that I've coupled it up to coaches and you put it on Gordon's Hill, which is only a small incline, the impact on the speed is quite noticeable, it's significant, and that's because there's very little torque in the mechanism and it does show through in the performance. There's no good reason for that, so I've knocked off another star. I've got countless other locos that don't exhibit that sort of behaviour. That being said, the raw tractive effort is okay at 50% speed. I measured 0.32 newtons, which converts to approximately 21 coaches on straight and level track. So that's very good. That's actually the same as the Hornby T9, and the Hornby T9 uses rubber traction tyres and this doesn't. So the pulling power is pretty good, even though there's very little torque from the motor. The mechanism though has to get a 2-star, and I do think that's fair because the pickup situation isn't great, loco to tender connection across the board is not very good. You've got no proper access, on my example at least, to the axles and the bearings for servicing and maintenance purposes, and so that will limit the loco's life quite considerably. You've got just a 3-pole motor inside, which would be fine if it performed excellently, but it doesn't, and also no flywheel either, so you lose some of the smoothness that would bring as well. It's not a great mechanism. The quality then is a bit of a mixed bag. Overall, I've given it 3.5 stars. The build quality is pretty good. We've got a little bit of glue here and there, but overall pretty good. The finish is obviously great as well. However, the exposed shafts, the visible glue, and of course the mechanism were not that great, and they have dragged the quality score down quite a lot. Okay, value for money then. RRP £214.95, and the model shop price was £182.70. Now that to me is far too expensive for a loco like this, so I've given it 2 stars. In order to justify this price, to me it needed to have a metal boiler, it needed speakers fitted to it, probably LEDs in the firebox, it needed a top quality mechanism with a 5-pole motor at the very least, a flywheel, proper pickups, all the features you can possibly think of, and even then I would probably say that it's quite expensive. Now I don't want to see comments blaming inflation for this price increase, because according to the Bank of England's website, the increase in price due to inflation alone should have been in the region of £27. The Bank of England website only goes up to 2020, so that could be about a year out, so take that value approximately, but even so that only accounts for a third of the increase in price, because the actual price increase was £82.15, and it's that extra £55 of price increase that I'm confused about. Now yes, there have been increases in labour costs and that sort of thing, but also this model is 10 years old now. Back in 2012, when this had an RRP of £132.80, they'd had to invest in a whole suite of tooling for this locomotive. Now though, in 2021, those costs are long gone, and they certainly haven't changed the tooling in any way that I can see. So as far as I'm concerned, yes, the value for money is not great. Overall then, that is 6.67 out of 10, not a fantastic score unfortunately. In order to get higher, this needed a better mechanism and also a better price that matches the locomotive. Let's put this into the logbook. There it is, 32nd place above the 416 EMU and below the Black 5. Well folks, that is it for another review. What a beautiful, beautiful loco. Such a shame that it's not perfect, and I wish I could have said, yes, it's amazing, go out and get one. Obviously though, I've got to be as honest as possible in these reviews. I've got to point out if there are issues, and certainly the issues are not mission critical with this loco, but they do need to be pointed out, and then the asking price does need to be assessed accordingly. So I feel I've done that. Do let me know what you think. Have I banged on too much about the price, or am I right to complain so much about it? Obviously I think I'm right, but then I'm only one person, so do let your opinions be known down in the comments. For now though, I'll say thank you for watching, and I will see you very, very soon with some more videos. Alright, look after yourselves folks. See you soon.